Welcome to Tech y Vida with Dr. J, where life and technology intersect. Welcome back to Tech y Vida. Today we'll be talking about a critical situation that unfolded in Los Angeles. It's related to the devastated wildfires that have been ravaging our communities for about to be a week. And it is part of my research when it comes to unforeseen events and technology. Before I dive in, I do want to express my deepest gratitude to all the brave firefighters, first responders, and countless volunteers, along with everyone that's been working tirelessly to combat these fires and support our affected communities. Your courage and dedication is truly inspiring. There are still multiple fires that are still active, including the Palisades and the Eaton fire, which are the biggest ones. These fires have claimed several lives. Last I checked, there was around 24 lives, and they have forced nearly 180,000 people to evacuate, along with destroyed several structures. I think it was over 13,000 or so last I checked the news. My heart goes out to all those affected by this tragedy. So in today's episode, I will be exploring technology and how it plays a crucial role in all the efforts that are underway with firefighting, early warning systems, and community support during this crisis. We'll also discuss, how, for me, it's really thinking about the emergency preparedness when it comes to the educational sector, businesses, and every sector out there that has to adapt, to their ongoing operations and support. So let's dive in. With unforeseen events or events such as these wildfires, and even thinking about COVID and Hurricane Katrina, I always want to start with safety first. I emphasize safety first because it is our job to make sure that, our health and well-being is taken care of before we could pivot and shift to something differently. So I always want to start with technology and the warning systems or the communication efforts that are underway. As we all know, as anything, you need to make sure that there's emergency alert systems which do leverage, the technology behind it to be able to help folks with evacuation warnings through their phone alerts. This really is important for all of you out there that are listening to make sure you have it. I will share, I did not have the local system configured on my iPhone for alerts. So I recommend that you go into your configuration or your settings and you make these changes, because it's really critical that you have these emergency alert systems, or, look for one out there that could really keep you up to speed or up to date, especially informed with everything that's happening in your surrounding. I will also say that as you're doing this, that you are responsible and or do your due diligence. I know that there was, for those of you that live in LA, there was a mistake that was done by the alert system, which was pretty much informing everyone through SMS to evacuate. I will tell you, I woke up at 3 a.m. and I was a little bit worried. I'm like, I can't believe that it made it this far, but it was a false alarm. So again, I fortunately was able to look at the different apps that I have to make sure that the alert that I was receiving was accurate or not. And fortunately for me, I got a call from my mom. My mom is 62 years old, and she got the notification, and she called me and she's like, "Mijo, I'm packing up my stuff." So it's really mindful, or scary to put it that way, that we need to be really mindful of how we leverage these different means of technology, because in the case of my mom, she was really panicking and afraid after everything that she's seeing. And we are going to get deeper into what's available out there with the different tools or applications that could really give you another means, because, like any technology, there are some mistakes that do happen as they're alerting folks. In a fire situation as such, there are fire tracking apps like Watch Duty, which really help you provide real-time information. You could also go to the designated website. We live in Los Angeles. There's a website where you could gather information and see everything that's happening. We all have social media. My last episode, I talked a lot about social media and, how we could leverage it for good, which is pretty much to spread updates, to be cautious and really tackle misinformation. I don't want to get deep into misinformation, but there's a lot of AI or a lot of fake content out there. However, social media being leveraged in a way that could help people is really critical. And then obviously we have live streaming news outlets that are really helping people with real time or minute to minute coverage on what's happening with these fires. I That is one thing that I always want to start with. What is currently available when it comes to technology, and really making sure that you're safe, your family is safe, and then focusing on items that could be replaced. I know it's easy for me to say it from my perspective, but I just want to make sure that everyone is in a safe space. Everything else we could work towards really, bringing back or strategizing on ways that we could further improve and or build upon. So that's the first item I do want to start off with, is safety. I also want to make sure that when we talk about safety, that we leverage it in a way that's going to be effective. So I briefly touched on misinformation. I also touched on having all these different technologies at a state of readiness that will keep all of us informed, and, having that accurate information, because sometimes it's scary not to have this accurate information, as it could really put our lives at risk. Now, that's one component, the early warning systems and the communication channels. I am going to jump into the technology component for this. So the technology is really critical for firefighting. We could talk about satellite imagery. We could talk about the AI predictive models and mobile apps, which I will go into detail right now. But as I think about everything, I was watching the news. I was in the LA fire site, and I was looking at those satellite imageries, which really help you with real time satellite data. And if it helps us as folks that are looking or observing from this lens to make sure that we're safe, it also helps our firefighters, and their technology is probably more advanced. They have technology that would be able to help them track fire and how it's spreading, and identify hotspots where it's going to really help them with where they're going to be able to tackle the fire from there. Now, you also can leverage predictive models, which have those advanced algorithms, which could help you with prediction, when it comes to the fire, the wind system, and behavior, to really tackle the spread. It really helps you to be more strategic with how you're approaching it from a resource allocation. We know that there's a lot of mobile apps. Firefighters are using specialized apps that help them with real-time communication and situational awareness. There's only a finite amount of resources for the fire department. And I know that during these firefighters, they have been really overwhelmed with the amount of requests and support calls and all that stuff. So firefighters also leverage all this wonderful information. And as I'm thinking about firefighting, thinking about advancements in robotics, I also like to think about the robot mechanisms that can be leveraged or are being leveraged in some departments, with experimenting with these controlled bots, which I think would be really important to help in certain dangerous areas. I think for me, it would be something to look towards in the future when I think about robotics and artificial intelligence, to make sure that our folks are safe and that everyone is in a good space. Now, these are some examples of technology that is available, or that is, currently being leveraged in firefighting. But even if we take a step back and we look at everything that could really help us be as proactive as we can when we think about firefighting. Now, by no means I am not a firefighter. I actually, have been doing a lot of research tied to this. I've been engaging folks that are firefighters and asking them some questions that could really help me provide this level of information. There's much more that's tied to this. For example, I was watching the interview with the governor where he was showcasing their new water system that they're using, or the airplane, or the plane that they're using to really tackle the fires from that airplane. They before, they were not able to tackle them during the nighttime with all the fire going on. So they would have to, they basically, what they did is they created a technology that gives them the opportunity to be able to tackle these fires. It's kind of like a night vision goggles that really helps them identify these hot spots and really hit it from there. I only stop and I really think about how critical technology has been to help with this fire, right? And it's been really important and fundamental, not to take away from human involvement, but it's instrumental. It's instrumental with anything that's happening today to really be proactive and preventative when it comes to these fires. Now, at the same time, I do take a step back and I do think about, prevention and being proactive when it comes to a lot of these efforts. We've made advancements when it comes to all these great technology tools. I would hope that in the future we're able to be more proactive with all these different efforts, understanding that these unforeseen events sometimes are out of our control. But with us being able to do all these innovative trends and really identify all these sources, I would really like to think about what we could do to make things or really tackle a lot of these items proactively as best as we can. I will, so talked about, making sure people are safe, talked about the technology and the firefighting and all that stuff. I was trying to bring someone that is really close and near dear to me to talk about this more. Unfortunately, they're really busy right now. But another element that I do want to bring into this is, with everything that's happened, with everyone that's been affected, technology has also helped with community support. And I say this because in times of crisis, we know that technology is enabling our communities to come together and support each other. If there's something that I am seeing about us as Angelinos, is that we really come together for now to cover the community support emphasis within the times of crisis, and what technology or how technology plays a pivotal role in fostering community. There's a lot of great things that are happening out there. For example, crowdsourcing platforms. We could talk about how all the volunteering coordination is happening. Platforms such as Nextdoor and Volunteer Match allow for folks to be able to connect organizations that need assistance with volunteers. It really helps with efficient coordination. There's a lot that has to be done. A lot of these efforts, which involve food, supply distribution, even animal rescue, and or other elements which are critical for the community, really require this level of coordinated effort through a simple app, which could help folks, get that level of support. Resource mapping. We could talk about platforms that can be used to map available resources that could help folks, such as shelters, food banks, and assistance programs, which really makes it easier for those that are in need to find the help that they need. As we talk more, another big one is the support groups or virtual support groups. We could talk about mental health support that's available. There's 7 Cups of Tea. There's talk space. We talked last week about mental health and how critical technology is to all of this. So by all means, there's a lot of great resources that are available, and there's a lot of support out there for folks that are in need of it, whether it's experiencing anxiety, trauma, and grief tied to the disaster. There's great programs which could really help you. And when it comes to virtual support for community building, we all need that level of support to check in. I will say, for me, I leverage Instagram a lot and Facebook, and we have groups where I'm able to check in with loved ones and see how they are. I've had a lot of friends that were displaced and are affected by the recent events, and it really helps me to engage and really talk or support them through these different channels that we could really help them when it comes to these support groups. I, try to offer my support and really create that sense of community where we could help. And we also use it as an avenue for another key one, which is fundraising technology. We know that there's crowdfunding platforms, platforms like GoFundMe and Global Giving, and there's many out there that enable individuals and organizations to quickly raise funds for relief efforts. I will say something to note, and I was really happy to hear this, that during these recent incidents or events, these crowdfunding platforms, or some of them, they have waived the fees to ensure that more funds are reaching those that are affected. So by all means, I use GoFundMe a lot, but it really demonstrates the power of technology to facilitate a compassionate effort when it comes to really providing that level of aid. And there's much more, right? There's digital payment systems, Zelle, PayPal, Venmo, which really help you support folks out there. But at the same time, I do want to make sure that everyone is vigilant, because just like it's, really big to help those in relief, there's also possible scams that could happen. So by all means, just, do your due diligence, your research, and make sure that you're being safe at the same time. The other element to all of this, which going back to the community support mechanism, and some folks treat it as remote work tools. For me, it's a more of leveraging Zoom, and for example, I use Google Workspace with my friends to enable us to come together and really engage, whether it's through a virtual environment and talk, and even leveraging, Facebook has that mechanism. I still use Google a lot with my friends, and it really helps us with engagement and being able to check in case, some avenues, or it's another means, right, at the end of the day, to be able to reach out to folks. And this is going to carry forward into business continuity, which is something that I do want to talk about in all of this, because when it comes to disaster preparedness and response, I know I started off this segment with safety. It's really important for us to be safe and to have a plan of action with any disaster or any unforeseen event. And from my perspective and my background, I always think about disaster preparedness, response, or emergency preparedness and response. Even people leverage business continuity as efforts to be able to prepare and leverage technology in ways that could help you with continuity. There's apps out there that you can leverage right now. Ready LA, it is a tool provided by the city of LA to help residents prepare for natural disasters. So you can find evacuation routes, emergency supply checklist, and real-time updates on fires or wildfires near you. We used MyShake in some areas where we use, for earthquake warnings that could really give you those alerts about what's happening around you. But it also provides alerts when it comes to the fires that might be happening near you. But going back to the topic of the business continuity or emergency preparedness, I I think about that a lot because I would have hoped that by now we're in 2025. We went through a pandemic, we went through a recession, we had Hurricane Katrina, we had a lot of these unforeseen events. And as institutions or businesses or even large corporations, I think about what it is that they're doing to prepare for all of this and what could they be doing to prepare for all of this. I say it because it does affect me. My daughter is within the LA premise for school. Fortunately, my daughter is from that perspective privileged, and we were not affected by what happened within LA Unified School District. But beyond that, even thinking about higher education, I always think about what tools or mechanisms do they have readily available when it comes to emergency preparedness, as we're really talking something that's critical for businesses to continue to operate and support, folks that are in need. Now, talking about education in this perspective about emergency preparedness or anything at this point, again, going back, I would have hoped that we have learned our lesson. First thing is really thinking about our digital footprint or infrastructure within the school systems. I always look at my daughter's school to see what digital systems they have readily available for educational continuity during emergencies. I always tend to focus on that to make sure that we have a plan of action. I'm involved in the committee, making sure that they are able to pivot and shift. I also look at their communication protocols. Communication is really critical. Again, I started off with safety. I started off with where there could be some potential for error. But as I'm thinking about emergency preparedness, and I am talking about education, but this covers everything, including those avenues within the community, the county, the city, having clear and strategic communication protocols is instrumental. These are clear communication channels that are being established to really quickly disseminate information about emergencies, operational changes, engage folks about these alerts. There's a lot that's going on out there. At my former institution, we used to have platforms that were leveraged for multimodality means of engagement, but it were really coordinated where we were able to do a quick pivot and shift. I'm really happy to say that when we've encountered or were affected by these unforeseen events, we were ready to go. And it was relatively easy because we were thinking about our emergency preparedness action plan and our business continuity, which I always talk about and I always bring up to any organization. Then you need to make sure you have this. And with that, it really comes to in today in 2025, I would hope that, we organizations out there have cloud-based systems ready to go or most of their infrastructure. I know it's expensive, but it's an investment to really put everything in a cloud environment that could help you pivot and shift and utilize a secure cloud-based system to really have those operational elements ready to go. And I know a lot of county, state, federal are leveraging these cloud solutions to be able to continue their operations, which helps people pivot and shift and be able to continue. There's a lot of remote communication tools which businesses are investing. I would hope are investing for reliable communication tools to could really maintain contact with employees during crises. We could talk CRMs, we could talk all these different or powerful tools. I've used Salesforce before. I've used something like for educational sector, Ready Education, but it helps us when we're engaging anyone or everyone. And again, I'm speaking or leveraging businesses and education all in one because these are surface level, high level items that we should be thinking about. And documentation, I find it astonishing that, there's still several businesses, and maybe I shouldn't be surprised that haven't gone digital when it comes to documents. If there's something out there, and one thing I do at home is we don't have much paper. We put everything in the cloud. Even if we get something paper, we snap it and we load it into the cloud. I am a big fan of it. And it really helps when it comes to emergency preparedness because you could just grab and go quick items that are going to be the essentials as you're moving pictures. My everything related to my family, my daughter, it's all in a cloud system or environment, and I digitize everything just to make sure that we're able to grab our essentials and still have those memories with us. Now, again, these businesses should also be able to coordinate the efforts with local agencies for emergency awareness that could help really be coordinated. And I think we've been doing a great job at this, but I would hope that folks are able to do this. Now, a big one in all of this is remote work or moving to a remote environment for folks that are supporting people during these tragic times and having the ability to, grab your laptop or your mechanism and be able to engage and support folks. So I always think about emergency preparedness from a technology perspective as something instrumental. And I will go into depth about emergency preparedness because a big part of my research was really thinking about COVID and what we experienced there and what I was observing throughout the US when people had a difficult time pivoting and shifting. Again, I talked briefly when I first started this podcast about how easy it was within, for me, the organization I was leading, because we were thinking or we were forward thinkers. I mean, we were thinking about the future with anything and everything what we had to do when we came to a plan. And also from my daughter's perspective, they also had, because I served in the board, I was able to support them from that lens and make sure that they were able to pivot and shift. And so as I'm trying to bring it all in and we talked about all these powerful things with safety, I also think about or try to look ahead when it comes to technology. And in this case, it could be wildfire prevention, but I do think about what technology could come up or be leveraged in the future. I'm by no means I'm not an expert, but I've done a lot of research. And one thing I think about is really continuing to advance those sensors that we have to detect the fires before they spread. There's a lot out there with the Internet of Things, these devices that are revolutionizing fire detection. These advanced sensors could really help monitor environmental factors, which are temperature, humidity, wind speed, and smoke particles that could really help us identify early signs, which, could, when it comes to fire ignition, I know that there's a case study that was done by Alert Wildfire by UC San Diego where they use cameras to detect wildfires. The systems have reduced response times, which really help firefighters contain smaller fires. But continuing to advance these sensors, I think, would help us be proactive when it comes to these fires. Climate modeling or predicting modeling for high risk fire seasons. We talked briefly about how we can leverage these predictive models and or artificial intelligence to help us with historical data, satellite imagery to predict wildfires. By all means, there's a lot of research that's being done coming out of the Climate Prediction Center, part of NOAA. They, talk a lot about what's out there and how they're leveraging this technology. Furthermore, it's the smart grid systems, which, they were doing, and I don't know if y'all read, but they were looking into whether it was a power lines that had caused this fire, and how we can leverage smart grid systems to really offer solutions that could help us when it comes to this infrastructure that's powering our cities, and working with the utility companies like PG&E or the Pacific Gas and Electric Company. That really helps. And again, there's a lot of research tied to that. Big one is vegetation management, really thinking about leveraging AI again to identify those high risk areas that could really help us, again, leveraging the satellite imagery to collect data and use machine learning algorithms, which could really help us target those different spaces or places where there's dry brush and overgrown vegetation. I do know that there's some great initiatives out there, forestry management initiatives out there that are using AI, and they've been publishing a lot of research tied to it. But again, I also think about robotics. A big one for me is robotics, leveraging these AI robots or robotics to help us with firefighting, along with, I think they would be pretty instrumental in saving not only our firefighters' lives, but also using this technology that could probably be tied to like some fire resistant coatings, some modern materials that could really help with fire prevention, and really using these tools with a bot that could go in there and turn off these fires that could save a lot of lives. But there's a lot of great stuff out there when it comes to innovative ideas and creativity that could really help us be proactive for the future. In terms of technology overall, to me, it's a repetitive theme, not related to fires, but emergency preparedness. I covered a lot of these bases. It's really being able to pick up and go during these tough times. There's a lot that happens, and we just need to be vigilant about this. All in all, I will say, as I wrap up today's episode, I again, the show's about technology and life, or Tech y Vida. And although technology is a powerful tool in our fight against these wildfires and thinking about unforeseen events, I still think that it's not greater than the human element. The bravery of our firefighters, the resilience of our communities, and the solidarity we show each other in times of crisis. That truly makes the difference. Again, Tech y Vida is to really showcase how technology is playing a role in everything that's happening in today's life. But vida, or life in of itself, is the most important part. And with that, I do want to, for all the listeners out there that are affected in those areas, please stay safe and follow all the evacuation orders. Remember, your life comes first. Your family's life comes first. So with that, thank you for tuning in to Tech y Vida. Until next time, stay safe and stay connected.